Greetings, Glitter Goddesses. It's 2 o'clock on Thursday, January 30th, 2020. Today, what we're going to be doing is making the inserts for the pencil box that we will be working on Sunday for our Scrappy Bowl project. So what we're going to be working on today are the inserts themselves, the things that would hold the photos, and then the sleeves that will hold the inserts within the pencil box. So let me grab the inspirational pencil box. All right. So what we're going to be making today are these things and whatever will go in them. All right. My idea is we'll make 3 of the sleeves. And I had said that we could do it either as Valentine or as sort of bookish, so that we could use it to keep track of all the books we read and discussed this year, which today, of course, is the first day where is the first book club. So today is the day we'll be discussing Cinder by Marissa Meyer, which was our first book. And then also, what do I have? Oh my gosh, I have to talk about Scrappy Bowl too. I was like, I feel like there's something I should be announcing. So yeah, so I'm going to be leaving these videos from today up on YouTube. And they will be available with the measurements and everything, so that you have that to get ready for Scrappy Bowl, even if you don't have the even if you don't have membership to the classroom. So, but what will not be on YouTube, so this is really important, what will not be on YouTube is Scrappy Bowl. Okay, so Scrappy Bowl will be archives only after it's live. I mean, it'll be live on YouTube. Anyone can join in while it's live. But afterwards, it will not be put on YouTube. So if you want the Scrappy Bowl project, you will need to come to Scrappy Bowl to get the link, to download it. So it's important that you be at Scrappy Bowl. And Scrappy Bowl is Sunday, February 2nd, 2020. That's this coming Sunday, and it starts at 6:30 p.m. Eastern USA time. 6:30 p.m. Eastern USA time. In the description for this video is a link to where you can sign up for the Scrappy Bowl prizes. You must be present at Scrappy Bowl in order to win the prizes. So you will be given a claim code for your prize at Scrappy Bowl, and you will need to email me that claim code. If you don't, then you will forfeit the prize. So you must watch Scrappy Bowl in order to win a prize, or you have to have access to archives. People who have access to the archives can always go look up codes if they can't watch live. So that's coming. We're also going to have a sale. We're going to do 40% off everything on the entire website. That includes Miracle Tape. It's a good time to stock up on Miracle Tape. And prizes, tons of prizes, so all that kind of stuff. So what we're going to be doing today, so be sure to check the link that I posted in the chat, or the link for the Scrappy Bowl. The link for the Scrappy Bowl prizes has all the information. The time Scrappy Bowl is, the where Scrappy Bowl is, the drinks, it has everything. So everything you need to know about Scrappy Bowl is at that link right now. So the only other thing you need to know about Scrappy Bowl is, how do we make the inserts that are going to go in the Scrappy Bowl day project, right? So first thing we need to do is we need to decide, do you want me to make a Valentine one, or do you want me to make a bookish one? Because I pulled papers that were bookish, like Etc. by Bo Bunny. These are all from my stash. Public Library by October Afternoon. I think those are the 2 bookish ones. Or we have Valentine's Day. I have Star-Crossed by Bo Bunny. I have Love Notes by Crate Paper. And whatever this is by Crate Paper. I don't even know. So let's do I was going to say let's do a vote, but people are voting for bookish primarily. So let's do this. If you want it to be bookish, which is what I think the vast majority of people do want, type a 1 in the chat. And if you want it to be Valentine, type a 2 in the chat. I'll give you a moment to I'll give you a moment to vote. I'll give you a moment to vote. This is a piece of the Catch a Tag Remastered. So and when you pull it out, there's still 2 photos underneath. Ta-da! Now, I have some good news. Well, I think it's mostly good news. But in order for this thing to be big enough to hold 2 4x6 photos, technically 4 4x6 photos, the pages have to be 13 inches, friends. And when the pages have to be 13 inches, what happens is we have to learn a new binding. So we will be releasing a new binding with this album as well. So that will bring us to 3 bindings. There'll be Infinity binding, Split Decision binding, and this one, which will be called Beyond Infinity, which will just be oversized Infinity. It'll be teaching you how to make an Infinity binding that's more than 12 inches. So it will be an album basics guide, and this is the main page element for page style A. There is a small amount of decorating in the album basics guide, just to show you. It was to show you how you can use the piece that you cut out of this on the door. But yes, this is coming up as well. This is the next project, and so yeah, so that's coming too on Scrappy Bowl. All right, we had 0 votes for Valentine's Day. Sorry, Valentine's Day, no one loves you. Harsh. Harsh. All right, so now you have to decide, do you want to do public library? I'll flip through the sheets. This is maybe a little, well, I was going to say it's a little juvenile, but really there was only a couple sheets that are super, super kid-like. All right, so that's public library, and then this is etc. Man, when this paper first came out, it was crazy popular. Crazy popular. This one's these are both vintage papers. They're just vintage in different ways. October Afternoon has kind of a 50s vibe. So sort of mid-century vintage. And then this Bo Bunny paper has a much older, like last century vibe. You know what I'm thinking? Looking at etc. I am thinking that maybe we should do the October Afternoon one, just because it's a little bit more colorful. What do you guys think? So if you want, hi Marta, hello, welcome. If you want to do public library, so public library is a little more colorful, a little more whimsical. Maybe it's vintage, but like 50 years ago. And then etc. is very muted, and then very vintage, more like 150 years ago. So if you want to do public library, type an L in the chat for library. L as in library. And if you want to do etc., type an E in the chat as in et. E as in et. All right, so public library is killing it. So let's do public library then. You guys are very decisive today. Very decisive today. All right, public library it is. there we go. All right, so now that we've chosen public library, we need to choose our cardstock. And then we'll get motoring. We're motoring. That's gonna like unofficially become the theme song of the show and people are gonna be like, why? All right. So let's get the swatch book. And let's just see what we've got. Let's just skip white. Now gray is a possibility, the charcoal, but I feel like, actually no, I have charcoal. So charcoal is a possibility. Actually, we can take these out because we're not holding space anymore. This color, this natural color, is a good choice for the photo mats, but there's so much of it in the paper itself, as you can see. It's a kind of a very pale that we wouldn't want to use it for the base. Now really buff, nah. And then beach, which is not the one I use as craft. So this is the one I have the most of, which is fresh malt. And that would work. You know, we could definitely use that. Although, oh, I don't have any bark. I need to order more bark. I was going to say this one would look really good, but I don't have any bark. I don't. I'm out of bark. Totally out of bark. Totally out of bark. Sad for me. We might use one of those reds. So far, they're the ones that are calling to me the most. Although, mustard's a little too green. What is this? Pumpkin? I mean, that kind of neutralish, orangish. That pumpkin could work. Happy birthday, Fran. Happy birthday, Fran. It's Fran's birthday. These greens are just a little cool compared to the green in the collection itself. And this blue is insane. I'm gonna go with, should we just use, just gonna imagine, I'm gonna flip through and imagine using pumpkin. I want to use this, whatever this color is. I'm gonna try and find something close to that. And that is, looks like solid gold. Yeah, pumpkin's a little too orange. We're going to use solid gold. Looks like I have enough of that. We'll be fine. All right, solid gold it is. So, we only need 3 sheets of solid gold. We're going to need more sheets of solid gold. That was a falsehood. A lie. A fib. All right. Solid gold. Oh, which I appear to have plenty of. So we're still good. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is welcome Brian. All right. So what we're going to do now is let's math. We're going to math. Math. Glorious math. All right. going to math. Okay, so this is the pencil case. And this video will be the inserts. Which are the things that go in the sleeves. And then I'll do a recording break and we'll do the sleeves. So for the inserts, I want the inserts to be the sort of like an exaggerated coin envelope. And then we'll do a button and string closure. So I want them to be 4 1/4 inches wide so that we can put a 4x6 photo straight on them and not need a photo mat, which then necessitates the height be 6 1/4. So what happens then is the base itself becomes the photo mat. So we know our dimensions there. So now how big of a piece of paper do we need to start with in order to have it fold over, fold over, fold over, fold over? All right, so we want to say have a 1/4 of an inch in between the top flap and the bottom flap. So each of those flaps needs to be 3 inches, which means we would have to add 6 inches to this. That gives us 12 1/4. That's annoying. So there's going to be a 1/2 inch in between them, and we'll go with 12. All right, so we're going to start with a piece of paper that is one cut at some measurement wide by 12 inches long. So now we need to figure out what's that sum measurement. What that sum measurement is the width doubled. So right now the width is 4 1/4. To double it, we need 8 1/2. And then plus whatever we want the two flaps to overlap. So let's say we want them to overlap by 1/2 inch. So now our paper is 9 by 12. All right, so does that make sense? All right, so let me walk you through how to calculate a custom envelope. All right, you start with what do you want it to be when it's closed, which in this case is 4 1/4 wide by 6 1/4 long. To figure out the length, you need the actual length of the thing plus whatever folds up and whatever folds down. All right. So in our case, that's these two flaps here. To figure out the width, you need the width times 2 plus whatever you want the two flaps to overlap, which in our case is a 1/2 inch. And that's it. You could make one of these literally any size you wanted, now that you know. So look at that. So now for every one of these we want to make, we need a piece that's 9 by 12. All right, so that's where we start. Okay, so let's cut a piece to 9 by 12. Which is an easy cut to make. That's an easy cut to make. All right. So now let's score. So on the 9-inch side, we want to center this, you know, which is 4 1/2, right? Yeah. I use Papermate. No, I don't use Papermates. No, I use Colormates. So the question was, what brand of cardstock do you use? I use Colormates, Smooth and Silky. So Colormates is the brand. Smooth and Silky is the imprint or the line within that brand, which I use because it's smooth. And I think smooth cardstock works better for construction. And this color that I'm using today is solid gold. Okay, so we want a 4 1/4 inch panel going down the middle, right? Because that's the size of our thing. And I could do math to figure out you know, I could do math to figure that out, but I'm not going to, okay? So I don't really have to do math if what I do is I center this on my piece and I score it. If I want it to be 4 1/4 all the way across, I'm going to score it at 2 1/8 on either side. All right, so that way, because 2 1/8 plus 2 1/8, I guess I technically did do math. And I'm using the blue numbers on the scoreboard. I'm using the blue numbers. They're the centering. All right, so now it's 4 1/4. That's all I needed. I just need a 4 1/4 inch panel at the bottom. So technically we would be scoring at 2 3/8 and 6 5/8. But you don't need to, so it's 9 inches. All right. So we'll make a note, score 9 at 2 3/8 and 6 5/8. Remember, if you're just joining me, that Scrappy Bowl is on Sunday, and if you want to be signed up for prizes, then you should click the video description and get the link for the prizes. Okay. So now we're going to turn on the 12 inch, and it's the same thing. We want a 6 1/4 inch piece in the middle. All right. So that's 3 1/8. So we just score at 3 1/8. And 3 1/8. Remember to use the blue marks. All right. And then their actual markings are 2 7/8 and 9 1/8. So all right, there we go. Okay. So let's continue making one, and then we can work on some other stuff. All right, so once we have done the scoring, it's time to fat slab, which is fold along all the score lines and burnish. All right. Now, let's talk about what we're keeping and what we're not keeping. We are not keeping the 4 corners. There you go. That's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut along the score line. I want to remove the score line. So I want the score lines to stay with the piece that I cut off, not the piece that I have remain. Okay? And just to make it easier to fold, I'm going to remove 1/8 of an inch of these side panels. Okay, so these 2 panels on the side. So these 2 are going, these 2 are going, these 2 are losing 1/8 of an inch off the top, 1/8 of an inch off the bottom. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my ruler, and I'm going to put it 1/8 of an inch in from this line. So I'm going to put the 1/8 of an inch mark on the score line, and I'm going to cut from the edge to the score line, from the score line to the edge. One of your friends from chat sent me a bunch of cool stuff to give away for you all on Scrappy Bowl. So there's even more prizes. Flip it around and do the same thing. There's even more prizes than I was planning. And she bought everyone who got one of her prizes a roll of 3/8 inch miracle tape as well. So that's a very generous gift. All right, so now it looks like this. Now we're going to remove these corners. This time I'm going to cut on the score line. So I'm going to make sure the score line goes, but just, you know, not trying to lose a lot in the process. Again, edge to score line to edge is where you cut. If you need to finish your cuts, go ahead. Save these because you can use them for your hole reinforcers. So okay. Alrighty. Now, it looks like this. All right. And it looks like this. So far so good. Looking cute. That's our pile of scraps, so we still want those. Now we're going to make some marks with our pencils to just give a little curve to our edges. So I'm going to line the 1/4 inch line of my ruler up with this edge and mark, you know, just marking where that is on the edge. All right. And then same on the top and bottom as well. So we're going to do that on all the flaps. All right. Okay, so now that I have all those, what we're going to do is we're going to draw a line from the corner to the pencil on every single one of these. And you don't have to draw the pencil line if you don't want to. If you feel confident in your cutting, then you can just cut that right off. But if you don't feel confident in your cutting, then draw the pencil line and cut it with, you know, later. Okay, so let's keep going. We're just going to do that on all of the corners. All of the corners. Now with these top flaps, you're coming down to the score line, not to the corner. So with these top flaps, you're not coming down to this corner, you're coming down to the score line that's 1/8 of an inch above it. So you're really cutting to the score lines, not to the corners. Although on the sides, the score line and the corner are one and the same. But on the top and the bottom, they are not. This was a good color choice too, because it's kind of that goldenrod color of like old school office supplies. Like those your inner office mailers. And you could use any of the inserts for love files probably. Well, no, they might be a little big. I think they're made for 6.5, so maybe they are too large. All right. So once you've got all your size cut, see how that makes it just a little bit more interesting to have those angles there. Take your eraser and take care of any stray lines that you have. All right, then once you've done that, you're ready to do your assembly line. So you want to make, I'm going to make 12 of these, one for each month that we do the book club. So, but I'm just going to do 2 more so that we have a total, well, maybe I'll do at least 1 more so you can see how you would then do an assembly line based on this. All right, so I've got my piece of 9x12 cardstock right here. Now I'm going to line up the one I just cut on the 9x12 one, just like so. And then now we have a template. All right. So all we have to do now is, well, actually, before I cut it, let me trim it because it's going to be easier to, or let me score it rather, because it's going to be easier to score before it's cut. So scoring the 9/9 edge at 2 3/8 and 6 5/8. And scoring the 12-inch edge at 2 7/8 and at 9 1/8. Okay. So what would we do at this point? We're just going to cut. that eraser was a gift from Donna in the chat, so I can cover up all my mistakes. All right, cut. So let's do this. Let's time how long it takes me to do one whole one, from cutting down from 12 by 12 all the way, you know. And then while I do that, before I do that, let me post the link to sign up for Scrabble Prizes so that while I'm timing myself, you can, we'll see. All right, so we'll do the stopwatch. So I'm going to take a piece of 12 by 12 cardstock. I'm going to cut it down to 9 by 9. So I haven't done anything at all yet. I'm going to get my template piece. I'm going to stick it down. Is this my template? No. This is my template. Yeah, my template. Use the same template piece for each. That way, if it gets off slightly, you're not carrying that change from envelope to envelope. All right. Then we're going to score. Two and 3/8 by 6 and 5/8 on the 9-inch side, and 2 and 7/8 and 9 and 1/8 on the 12-inch side. Then we cut with our scissors. Remember, we're keeping the scraps to make our hole reinforcers for these. So don't throw out your corners just yet. Notice that I'm not rushing. So you don't need to speed. You don't need to speed through this. Three minutes. All right, it's only 3 minutes. So no big deal. Just put on an episode. Of your favorite show, and you'll be done before you're through one episode. Look at that. All right, so let's do one more from start to finish, then we'll have 4 of them. And that'll be enough to do one of the sleeves, because it's going to be 4 per sleeve. 4 per sleeve. All right, so Barbara Jean is saying she thinks she can make SVGs for this project. Barbara Jean, if you want to, I can include them in the Scrappy Bowl link so that even people who don't have access to archives could get them if you want. Then everyone could have them on Sunday in the folder. All right, so all right, so Barbara Jean, just email me and I'll make sure it happens. Once you have them, I'll make sure they get included so everyone who comes to Scrappy Bowl will get a copy. And if Barbara Jean doesn't, then Barbara Jean doesn't. If she gets busy, she gets busy. So this is a bonus, and it's already a bonus project, so it's a bonus project. It's a bonus to the bonus. Bonusception. All right, so on the 9-inch side, we score at 2 3/8 and 6 5/8. And if you're watching this on the recording on YouTube, or 2 7/8 on the 12-inch side and 9 1/8, or in the archives, be sure to go to the Kathryn Scraps Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Kathryn Scraps, to sign up for 10 to 12. Joe asked how many will we need. 10 to 12. My goal is for us to read 12 books this year, but if we don't, you know, like my fallback goal is for us to read 10 books this year. So I have a goal and like a fallback goal. So I've designed it to hold 12 though. Welcome Paula. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Barbara Jean. Safety goal, exactly. Just like my goal is to read 100 books this year, but what I put into Goodreads was 52. So that I would for sure meet my goal no matter what. All right, so there's the third one. So now what we need to do is we need to make a template for the pieces that we make out of pattern paper. And so there's 2 of these. We need a template for the sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck my cardstock in and trace around it. And again, I'm using the original template so that everything is in roughly the same shape. And then same for the bottom. We need the bottom slash top, right? And this is how we'll cut our pattern paper. All right. So these all cut. And we will cut these 1/8 of an inch in on each side. So I'm putting my ruler, not lining the edge of my ruler up with the lines I just drew, but putting the 1/8 inch mark on my ruler with the lines I just drew. I know, I'm still waiting on Scarlet too. I put all the other books in the series on hold. Okay, so for book club this month, we read Cinder by Marissa Meyer, which is a retelling of the Cinderella story in a speculative fiction way, where instead of a glass slipper, she has a robot foot. And it's part of a series of books known as the Lunar Chronicles. And my understanding is that each Lunar Chronicle will retell a different fairy tale, but that all the books will fit together into one overall arc. So we have started with Cinder. Oh, she also has a robot hand, yes. And she has a robot brain, let's be honest. I think she's about, what, 1/3 robot and 2/3 person, I think is what the analysis said. So, the main conflict of this series of books is between the Earth and the Moon. And many, many years ago, a bunch of people left the Earth, so humans left the Earth and moved to the Moon and started a colony up there. And at some point, relations broke down between those humans and the humans on Earth, and they became hostile to each other. And also, a virus that's like an instant death plague kind of deal, or 100% guaranteed death kind of deal, has taken over the planet that people from the Moon are resistant to. And the people on the Moon have simultaneously evolved to be superhuman in some ways. And the way in which they're primarily superhuman is in that they have an ability to do something called glamour, which in folklore is typically seen with the Fae. And that is to trick people into thinking that they see something that they don't. So into this world, there is Cinder, who is a cyborg who was adopted by an Earth doctor while he was on a business trip, which incidentally is a bizarre choice to make as a person, but whatever, let's not get too into that. But I mean, can you imagine if your husband was like, hey, I adopted this kid while I was gone on my business trip. Congrats. Also, it's a robot. I mean, it was kind of a rude thing to do. So, and then he died. So now Cinderella's evil stepmother is actually her guardian / adopted mother. And, you know, she's basically caring for a kid by herself that she never asked for. All right, so now we have the templates for the sides and the top. So these are important, and we'll keep those as well. So I'm going to take all my template pieces, and I'm going to just stick them all together. And I'm going to close them all up with a clothespin so they stay together. Plus her own 2 children. Right, she has her own 2 children. All right, so those are all going to hang out together. All right, so now let me show you how to make the hole reinforcers, which are the last thing we need of the cardstock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 1/16 inch hole punch. And I think we can probably get 4 out of here. So yeah, that was my first thing where I was like, well, hold on a second with the guy who adopted her. He's not a character in the book because he's dead, which is consistent with Cinderella. Her dad is dead in the fairy tales as well. And she has 2 daughters who are named Peony, who's the younger, and Pearl, who's the elder. And Peony is fun, and Pearl kind of sucks. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Pearl's a teenager, so it's kind of like, you know, teenagers, they're going through a lot. So sometimes when it's like the evil teens who all hate each other and think each other are the worst is a plot point. I just remember what my sister and I were like when we were teenagers, and you know, I thought that we would murder each other, but you know, eventually like we grew out of that. You know what I mean? So I'm not sure. You know, it's in the fairy tale. That's why it's in the retelling, I think. But you know, there's a lot of explanations for why teen girls don't get along. Now, part of the problem is that there is some injustice in how Cinder is treated. She's forced to work to support the family, and no one else appears to work as far as I can tell. She's not allowed to keep any of her own money. She has to steal just to upgrade her cyborg parts so that they'll fit her as she grows. So, you know, there's quite a few issues. It's not like Cinder's just a jerk who has some hormone problems. And then, of course, over all of this, there is the specter of, at any minute, you could be exposed to this super deadly virus. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Right? Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Okay, so that's half. So... and, oh yes, Aiko is another character. Correct. Thank you. And Aiko is a character in all the books, is my understanding. So, which was nice. That was nice. Because Aiko is a robot who is obsessed with beauty. It's actually really cute. I thought that was an interesting touch in the programming. She likes things like ribbons and shoes. And she's very interested in things that are pretty. So... so basically Cinderella wants to run away, you know. Because no one understands her and life is horrible and what have you. So, so that's all what's going on. So how many I need to make? 4 more. Okay. Yeah, I loved Aiko. Aiko was a lot of fun. So basically, we first meet Cinder doing her job, which is fixing robots. And the prince needs his robot fixed, and he doesn't want anyone at the palace to fix it for reasons that we learn later. So he brings it to Cinder to have her fix it. And that's the start of the plot, really. So that's her first interaction with the prince. Now, one of the least believable things to me about the whole thing, and maybe this is just me getting like old and, you know, having a heart of stone or whatever, but I didn't really get like why Cinder and the prince were so into each other, or if she was even that into him, and if he was, why he was so into her, because he was clearly into her. So I didn't really buy their relationship too much. I'm assuming it's going to develop over the rest of the books, because it's also not like they had a lot of meaningful interactions. Yes, Aiko does fawn over the prince, and it's really funny. And Aiko is obsessed with going to the ball. So it's not like Cinder doesn't care about going to the ball all that much. It's more, it's just, but Aiko wants to go to the ball. So basically there's a couple different plots happening in the book. You know, you have the, and this is what I will say is a strength of the book, which is when you have a book that's part of an arc, each book needs to have its own contained story. Maybe the prince is into her just because she's not into him. Maybe, because he's used to people like being obsessed with him. And she's always like pushing him away. But on the other hand, it's like once a girl's told you, I'm not into you, like every single time you have an interaction, maybe it's like, dude, maybe she's like just not that into you. All right, so I'm going to put all of these circles except for the 6 that I need for the 3 envelopes that I have set aside to work on today. And I'm going to put them in the envelope so that I'm done, and then I can recycle what's left here. Yeah, he doesn't get hints. He definitely doesn't get hints. All right, so now I can fold along all my score lines and burnish. So we're going to fat slab the 3 that I just made. And then the other main character is the doctor who's in charge of researching a cure for the plague. So he's the other main character that you need to kind of know. And then, of course, there's all the people from the moon. So the Lunars, which are the bad guys. They are cartoonishly bad. So, you know, they're comically bad. As in, like, you know, they just want to kill everyone and take over the world because that's what they like doing, because that's what they do. Now, I know there's a book about Levana that's not part of the lunar cycle. It's kind of a prequel to the lunar cycle that's supposed to give some insight into her character. She is the Wicked Witch from Snow White. That's who she is, very clearly. Very obviously hates mirrors, glamours herself to always look young and beautiful, that sort of thing. Yeah, they're not very nuanced bad guys. Like if you were looking for bad guys who, you know, kind of the trend now is bad guys need to kind of have a point. Like you have to be able to be like, well, I mean, it's not what I would do in your circumstances, but I can understand why in your circumstances you would choose to do that, right? That's kind of what we want from bad guys now. That is not Levana. She is just total jerk. Total jerk. All right. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to start putting our pattern paper on these. So let me get my paper pad. And it is a very Disney-ish, right? There's very little nuance. That's a good point. So what I'm going to do now is, and the reason we need to do our pattern paper is because, you know, the envelopes are not totally structurally finished until they have their closure on them. And the closure, it's actually attached to the flap, not to the, or it's attached to the pattern paper, not to the flap itself. So we need, actually I need these. We need these. And let's mark a hole on this one so it's part of the template for the paper so we know where to put it. So they're 1/2 inch apart. So if I come up 1/2 inch, they'll be like 1.5 inches apart. Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to come up 1/2 inch. And this is on my pattern paper template. And then my pattern paper template's about, it's not quite 4 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of center it on my mat and then trace the line. So I'm just eyeballing it. And then at the intersection of this cross is where I'm going to put a 1/16 inch hole punch. And that is going to help me mark my pattern paper. So what we need to do is we need to pick 2 patterns of paper that go with each other for each of these. We need to pick these and these. And then the under flaps, my plan is we'll put a picture about the book here. We'll put journaling spots here and here. And then I don't know what's on the top and bottom. We can do another pattern of paper. So we need 3 patterns of paper. And then the back, you can leave blank or put another photo back there or write more notes if you had a lot of notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just look for a pattern of paper that's going to look good with this pattern of paper, and then we'll go from there. Actually, okay. All right, so all right, let's start there. Am I going to pick out paper for the box? Probably not. I mean, I guess I probably should. Okay, so for the box, the 2 that are jumping to mind are the library card catalogs. My hesitation with this would have to go on the sides because it's not laid out right to go on the front or the back. But it could go on the sides because the sides are about 3 inches. So this could go down the side. That could be really interesting. So we could set that aside. And then for the front and the back, oh, this, look how cute. This could be like it's wrapping around. Now, we do have a minor issue of, because the box itself will be sort of, well, it's going to be at least 6.5 inches across, probably more like 6 3/4 inches across. So we technically will need 2. This is public library by October afternoon. We'll technically need 2 patterns of paper to cover the front and the back. Well, that depends. So, oh, we have to include the tiny cat reading a book. We should. That is a tiny cat reading a book. That's true. When I say that depends, is I'm thinking about making the entire back of the piece, instead of having pattern paper on it, having craft text, so that see how on this it's scored, so there's this joint. I'm thinking about doing this back panel where they have just poster board. I'm thinking about doing this as a sheet of craft text so that it's very sturdy on this movement, you know, because tiny cat doesn't tear, because craft text doesn't tear. Alternatively, if you don't have craft text, you could use a sheet of pattern paper that's got Tyvek, as like a Tyvek pattern paper sandwich. Okay. So, but I think a piece of craft text is going to look really cool because it's going to make it look like leather, because craft text does have that leather-like look. So the back of it will look like leather. This whole thing is not going to be made out of a poster board material anymore. I changed my mind on that, and it's actually going to be made out of chipboard, just so it'll be sturdier. So it will be a chipboard box, and the 2 halves of the box will be held together by a sheet of Tyvek or craft text, depending on your personal preference. So I could actually, I'm going to use this for mine. So I'm going to save these 2 pieces for mine. I'm going to save this for the front. and this for the side, and the back will be a piece of craft text. So I'm going to go ahead and put these two back in the bag. All right. Any questions so far? Or do you have the gist? Donna, you love the Cliff Notes. Carswell, is that the advisor? See, the problem is I read this book at the beginning of the month and I borrowed it from the library as an ebook, and then there was a huge weight on it, so I couldn't get it again to refresh myself with who everyone was. All right, now let me think about this. Yeah. I'm going to turn this over, and I'm going to use the same line in between them. Carswell is a thief. Now I don't remember him at all. How am I not remembering this? There was a thief? Like on the page? I don't remember that at all. Maybe he's in Scarlet. Okay. All right. Okay. Sounds like he's in Scarlet. Never mind. We don't need to remember Carswell. He's in the next book, everyone. So we don't need to remember the future. Phew. It's hard enough remembering the past. Remembering the future is really tough. Really tough. All right. Well, that's Gretchen, that's a valid criticism of Cinder, I think, which is that it wasn't enough of a complete story in and of itself. The other criticism I will say give of Cinder, which is, you know, this is the author's first book, and I think she was fairly young when she wrote it. My biggest issue was I think she was too heavy with foreshadowing. Because I knew everything that was going on with Cinder about 20% of the way in. And I don't think she wanted me to know it about 20% of the way in. You know what I mean? Like, I think it was just, too much foreshadowing. Yes. And, yeah, I don't think it needed to be a retelling of Cinderella necessarily. It could have just been a girl with a cyborg arm. So yeah, it was pretty predictable. Now, that being said, it's young adult, which I'm not saying that young adult is a bad genre or that, like, brilliant books in young adult don't exist. They absolutely do. Scott Westerfeld, for example, is one of my favorite authors in the YA genre. His books are amazing. And not totally predictable. So, you know, I'm not bagging on the genre, but I am saying that you're not necessarily going to YA for complex writing. You know, if I had to think of the thing that I think distinguishes YA from adult, the most, it is how complex is the writing, you know, and what kind of themes are explored. So like, if this book was an adult book, one of the primary themes that would be explored would be the slavery of the people who are cyborgs. That they can be conscripted into that medical testing thing, that they can have their wages taken by their guardians, that they have to have guardians, you know, like that they're sort of semi the property of either their family or the government, depending on the situation. Like, that's something that I think would have been explored more if the book was aimed at more adult audience. But because this was aimed at a younger audience, there's so much of her interacting with the prince, right, instead of that type of exploration. So and that it's not really framed as problematic as it is, you know, that they are treating people this way. The doctor is extremely sinister because in his quest to find the right cyborg teen girl that he's looking for his purposes, he is mass murdering cyborg teen girls in medical experiments that he knows will fail. So like, there's a lot of things that are like very heavy that gets skimmed over in the books. I think because of the audience it was aimed at, right? Like, this could have been a lot darker for sure, because there's a lot of really dark stuff going on. Bye, Fran. Now, all that being said, I think it was a perfectly fine book. On my good, bad, meh scale, I would give it a meh. You know, I don't think it's bad at all. But, you know, I didn't think it was good. Well, good for me. It really should be great, bad, meh. Because, you know, maybe meh is, maybe I should reflect on my system. But I gave it a 3, which is the rating that I give genre fiction if I think people who like that genre, in this case YA, science fiction, fantasy, would like the book. But that it doesn't transcend its genre and become a quote-unquote great work of literature. So that's kind of where it is for me on my personal and totally subjective rating scale. Now, I am curious about the rest of the books, and I found it to be easy to read. So, you know, I do have them on loan from my library just to see how everything wraps up. Because I am curious. All right, so look at how cool this pocket is coming together. Snow Child, was it a drag because it was hard to read, or was it a drag because it was depressing? Because it seemed like it might be depressing. Well, I wanted to talk to you all about next month's book. Because I was thinking, because it's February, we might read an adult contemporary romance. And I have 5 kind of on my short list that I'm thinking of. Oh, okay, so it was just very predictable and slow as well. Maybe modern fairy tale retellings are not for us, friends. And maybe I made a mistake, because one of the books I took off the list was one called The Bear and the Nightingale, which is an extremely, I found out later after we'd already voted on the books, which is an extremely well-regarded series, part of an extremely well-regarded series that's Russian retelling. Haroon was wonderful, but I can't see many people liking it or getting it. Well, you know, Haroon, I think that's one of those books that it's like, that's a mood, you know, that's a mood, right? So, you have to be in the right mood for that. So I don't know if it's necessarily like something you just like want to pick up casually because you're in a book club or whatever, if that makes sense. But that could just be me. That could just be me. All right, so now I'm going to poke the holes that I just marked when I did this. And we're going to put the hole reinforcers and the brads, you know the drill. And let's go pick, I'm going to go get some bakery twine. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to use I can either use I have this brown and craft twine. Let me just use this. I'm going to go ahead. So we'll see. So I'm trying to, that book of all the ones that I suggested was the most popular, like the most commercially successful Cinder. And the most critically acclaimed was Haroon. And the one that was the combination of, it was both popular and critically acclaimed, but it wasn't as popular as the first one or as critically acclaimed as the other, was Snow Child. So it's kind of hard. Like, I will tell you, it is hard to pick books for a book club. And anyone, if you've ever been in a book club and you're like, why do they always pick such bad books? Let me tell you, it's not on purpose. Like, you can read all the reviews and all the best of lists and still, he's still not great. So I have a renewed respect for people who pick books for book clubs, that's for sure. Thank you guys. Thank you. So yeah, I don't know if that's what you want to do for February. Or if we wanted to do a thriller, maybe with an icy setting because it's still winter. That was another thing I thought of. I don't know. What are your thoughts? I definitely don't want to do anything in the speculative genres. So that would be no fantasy, no sci-fi, because we just read a speculative fiction genre pick. So I want to keep mixing it up. No sci-fi ever. So no, like, hard, do you mean hard sci-fi where everyone's on a spaceship and like shooting each other with lasers, Priya? Because technically there are aspects of Cinder that were science fiction versus fantasy, and that people live on the moon and there were spaceships. But I felt like it had more fantasy vibes than sci-fi vibes. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? All right. And then this one, it just gets the brad and the circle, not a string also. Ooh, banana bread. All right, so now I'm going to put tape on these. And I'm going to around the 4 edges and then right above the and I'm letting everything go off the corners just so I know, because everything is angled, it's good to let it go off let the tape go off the corners a little bit, just so we know that we really have the corners stuck down and we don't have to worry about the corners peeling down the line. So I go around the 4 edges, and then we also want to go right above the tape so that when you're wrapping and unwrapping, you're not pulling on the whole center. You're not lifting the whole center. You have this stuck down so that you're not moving a lot. And then, well, all right, I'll ponder it some more. I did find a book club prompt list somewhere. Maybe at the end I can read it to you, and if something jumps out at everyone like, oh, that sounds good. Do I have and then there was a question of when do you give up on a book? Do you have a rule of thumb? I am willing to give up on a book at any point where I've gone where it's just, I don't care, so it's not, I don't make myself read 100 pages. I've given up on books 200 pages in, whatever. It's not, there's nothing specific where I always read the first chapter. I've heard people say, I don't give up on a book until I've read 100 pages X. I don't care. When I don't care anymore about the story you're telling, that's when I'm done. That's when the book and I are finished. So, and if I quit a book because I don't like it, I give it 1 star. That's very controversial. There are people who think you can't rate a book unless you finish it, which I think is dumb. Yes, I can. Yes, indeed, I can tell you that these characters are so bad, or that it's so poorly written that there's no way halfway through, okay, that the writer suddenly became good, So, that I don't need to read the rest to know that this is bad. Historical fiction, that's a good one. I haven't read a lot of historical fiction lately. Well, that's not true. I just finished The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, which is historical fiction and historical, almost magical realism. I would say there definitely were elements of the book that made it feel like it was not grounded in reality, which is not to say that the book is very real, grounded in reality, and that it's a pretty unflinching look at, the antebellum South and what it was like to try to escape that. That being said, the Underground Railroad's a real railroad, people, in this book. And there's, and no one notices that it is a real railroad. So, that's what I mean when I say that there's these almost mystical elements to it. And so he puts in these sort of fantastical elements because it helps illustrate, what he's trying to say. And that's a National Book Award winner if you are looking for one of those. I also read The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo this month, which is written in verse about a high school girl who wants to be a poet and who has friction with her mother over that. Oh, All the Light We Cannot See. That is a historical fiction, and it's won a ton of awards. That's true. It absolutely has. And I also heard that A Lovely War is good. That's a retelling of Greek myth in the setting of World War One, I believe. I also had 1917 strongly recommended to me as something you want to see in the theater if you possibly can. Because the scope of it, you know, is something that if you can see it in the theater, you want to have had that experience. So if that's a movie that you're interested in, you know, that's a piece of advice from someone who I typically trust on movies. So I'm going to try and see it soon. I was a major, my major in college was history, and my sort of specialty or concentration was modern European history. Of course, World War One is a huge aspect of that. You study World War One so much in modern European history because it changed so much about the world. And it just showed, one of the things it showed is that, you know, the colonialism that was happening, how just something that was a relatively minor incident caused this huge conflict because of all these because of this colonial expansion, and everyone had all these resentments over it and things of that nature. So, all right. So now we're going to stick these down on the sides. One of my favorite, if you enjoy historical fiction, and particularly if you'd be interested in medieval, Sharon K. Penman is one of my favorite historical fiction writers. She writes about the Tudors a lot and how well, not exactly. She has one cycle which I highly recommend, which is the Welsh cycle, which is how Wales became not a country, came to be ruled by England. And so the last princes of Wales. And those are very good. So look how cute now. How cute is this? All right, so there we go. So that's one. So now what do we need to do? We need to, now we're going to open it flat. And like I said, here is where you would put your photo of whatever, you know, so like your book cover, if you're going to record your books. And then on these flaps are where you would record your thoughts. I'm going to put journaling paper here and here, and I'll put pattern paper at the top and bottom. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this pattern paper. Ooh, or this one. I'll use this one. Candy, she said that she reads trash that adults hate. So, uh-oh. Well, now we know. Don't pick the most popular book. Or we'll just run everything past Candy's granddaughter first. Where's my... Did I put it away? No. I lost it. Ah! Great. Well, fantastic. Oh, I found it. I found it. Now, remember, you want to put things one right side up and one upside down when you use them for your flaps, because, you know, one flap, the flaps go in different directions once they're opened. So, one upside down and one right side up. Son has you reading Caesar by Colleen McCullough. Oh, 650 pages is a lot. I read an 800-page book this month, and it took me, you know, it took me some time. There's some books, it just takes some time to get through. You know, that's one thing when you're weighing books is, you know, am I going to have... Oh wait, I don't need to mark these because these are going straight down. You know, if you could have 300-page experiences in the length of time that it takes to have one 900-page experience, you know, you kind of want to make sure that 900-page experience is going to be really great. I read a book that is hugely praised. I did not love it. So... Not that I felt like I wasted my time, because I don't think reading is a waste of time. However, just in general, I mean, I'm also not someone who says all books deserve to be read, because there are some books that are really bad, guys. Really bad. So, I read a book called The Lightbringer by Donna Gillespie, and all of the characters, and that book's over 1,000 pages, and Judy, and all the characters were either Romans or Britons, or maybe they were German, like German tribes. But so they either had tribal names or Latin names. The Devil in the White City is a really good book. I have read The Devil in the White City. It's a really interesting look at a lot of different factors that all came together in one place, you know, but it is also about the serial killer H.H. Holmes, who, you know, he's the murder house guy. So if you're not into reading about serial killers, that's, even though it's also about the Chicago World's Fair and a bunch of other stuff, it's still, you know. But yeah, that's a good book. I've read that one. So yeah, things that I would change if I wrote Cinder. Let's see. Peony's Peony's final scene in the book, I would have completely changed, and I would have had the emotional experience of Peony not doing what she wanted. Wake up, what's her name's latent talents, Cinder's latent talents for manipulation. Because, you know, I think it's also good to, we don't have to kill everyone just to make situations serious. You know, like we knew that situation, we knew the situation was serious before. But I'm grumpy, so there you go. All right, so I'm gonna get this, and then we'll do the journaling spots. Yeah, she was definitely the better one, unless Pearl is gonna have some really dramatic redemption arc over the course of the rest of the books, which could be interesting if that did happen. I just feel like it's not gonna happen. So I didn't get the impression she was headed that direction. All right, so now we need to do our journaling spots on the sides. And I'm going to go ahead and stick the rest of these in here. Pearl's a minor character. So yeah, so she's not going to get redeemed. So. All right. I didn't think so. I didn't get the vibe we were headed that direction. All right, now let's get some journaling paper. Yeah. Gretchen, yeah, I think things... There were also some other things like her coming and going from the hospital. I was like, what? Is there no security around here? Is this not a palace? Why is this hospital in the palace? That's weird. Like, I mean, there were, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I think is just... just better choices could have been made in a lot of different spots. Oh, they had androids guarding the hospital? Okay. I'm guessing the doctor like reprogrammed them or something. Like I said, I read it, and I'm not going to necessarily remember everything perfectly because I couldn't refresh myself because I couldn't get the book again. Because it's that popular. It's that popular. Oh, the hospital wasn't in the castle. Only the doctor was in the castle. Okay. How do you print your paper 13? So the way that I get my paper with paper at the top and cards at the bottom on a 13 by 19 is I open the files in Photoshop and I make a 13 by 19 canvas and I put them, I add them together. So I add a row of cards and I add a 12 by 12 sheet at the top, and then I print it all as one 13 by 19 piece. And when I do this, I save them all, okay? So that, you know, anytime I need to print them in the future, they will print like this, where there's no wasted space. All right. So this time we're going to put them facing each other because they will need to be, like, we want the lines to be continuous all the way across. So then I'm going to flip it over and then so I'm going to just okay. So like I said, I have them facing each other so that when I cut them out, they will be, the lines will go straight across the page. Maybe what we should do is draw a name each month and that person gets to be the dictator. I guess I'd have to keep veto power if for some reason I thought the book wouldn't work for the group for some reason. And they could choose a book. That's some pressure. There are a lot of different likes and dislikes in the group. It's true. Dune is really long. That's a mean choice, Fran. Then people wouldn't have any crafting time because they'd be reading Dune for an entire month. Although I'm thinking about reading 1Q84, which I would not pick as a book club book because it's 1,400 pages. I'm not opposed to big books, but I don't know that they're right for a book club where we're also crafting, so there's not a lot to talk about. Um, we don't have time to just sit and talk for an hour. But yeah, with Cinder, you know, if I had friends who were looking for books for their teens, I would say go for it for sure. Um, you know, but yeah, I think that it could have been, some of the themes could have been explored more interestingly by an adult author. That's probably my general consensus. There was nothing that I hated, that I felt like so very strongly about, that it took the book into the bad category for me. But there was also nothing that I loved, that I felt so strongly about, that it took the book into the, you know, great, amazing, it's my favorite. But I did want to know more, and I am curious to see how they're going to incorporate other characters as well. And I've heard good things about Scarlet in particular, which is the next book in the series. So yeah, Cinder is probably not a book I would have read on my own. Otherwise, either I got it off a list on Book Riot that. Winter is really long. Ooh. Well, I may space them out. Right now I'm reading the Ancestor trilogy by Mark Lawrence, which takes place on a planet that might be Earth, not 100% sure, where the sun is a dying red giant. And so because of how weak the sun's rays are, the entire planet is almost entirely covered with ice, except for a 50-mile wide corridor around the equator, and that's where all the people live. And that part of the planet is kept free of ice by something they call the moon, but it's actually a mirror that was put in the sky by some advanced race to help them survive. And then that race died off because they couldn't survive on their planet, so they weren't able to finish helping them, I think, leave, because they built several things around the planet called arcs. So the impression, and then whoever lived there before these people, who only remember living in this corridor of ice that the aliens made for them, our group of people who built huge cities, they're all buried under the ice. Those people are called the missing. So essentially what they're trying to figure out is how to make the arcs work, so they can either fix the moon and make it more powerful, or leave, find another place, whatever. But they're all medieval in their understanding of technology. And all the people who understand how technology work are all dead. So that's kind of the world. And they're just trying to figure out how they're going to survive. So they're kind of interesting. All right, now here's our little folder. Okay, so what we would do is we would put, I'll put a picture of Cinder in there. I'll write my little mini review and when we read it, and then that way I'll have a record of the first book. All right. So these are the envelopes or the inserts. And of course, whatever you want to use this for, use it for. You don't have to use it for the book club, because these will hold 4x6 photos. So you can put anything in these little envelopes that you want. And then what we'll do is tonight we'll make the sleeves. And then that way, yeah, I'm going to put a picture of the cover of the books. That's what I'm going to have my picture be. Yeah, I think I'll number them by the month for that, so that I know which month they were read. That'd be really cute. Thank you, Paula. All right, so in the next class, which will be tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern USA time. We'll make the sleevesies go in. And we'll go over the announcements and all of that. So make sure that you go and sign up for Scrappy Bowl. So Scrappy Bowl is Sunday, February 2nd, this Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern USA time. All right. And if you want a chance to win a prize, you have to sign up before Scrappy Bowl. Once Scrappy Bowl starts, there's no more signups. So in the description of this video, if you're watching it on YouTube, whether you're watching it live or watching the recording, it will be in the video description. There is a link to the Facebook post where you sign up for Scrappy Bowl. If you're watching this in the archives, go to facebook.com/Kathryn Scraps, and it'll be one of the first few posts on the Facebook page. So you should be able to find it no problem, assuming you're watching it at the end of January 2020 or the very beginning of February 2020. Signups will close at noon on Sunday, so make sure you do this pretty quickly here. These signups don't stay open long. And you have to be present in order to win, because you will be given a secret word at the Scrappy Bowl, and then you have to email me that word by a certain date to claim your prize. So be sure to make sure that you've got all of your I's dotted and T's crossed and all of that. You don't want to miss something on a technicality or anything. And then I have one more announcement, which is that the reason that Sandra can't be here for Scrappy Bowl is because she has to start radiation on Monday, February 3rd in Jacksonville. So she obviously doesn't have time to travel from Tampa to Jacksonville in time for that. And she's got other stuff going on. So she would really appreciate your thoughts and prayers. Excuse me. She would really appreciate your thoughts and prayers as she goes through her cancer treatment. So Sandra, we wish you a full and speedy recovery. I hope that treatment is a breeze for you and that it doesn't trouble you too much and that it's effective and that your doctors make all the right decisions. So, and then hopefully you can still, get some fun out of the glitter gang while you can. So that's why Sandra won't be here with us this weekend. So wishing Sandra all the best for her healing. So thank you so much, everyone. I know she would really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see her back soon. So thank you all so much for keeping Sandra in your thoughts and prayers. She's ready to go. She's feeling strong. So, yeah, you have the support of all of the glitter gang. So, hope everything goes totally smoothly and you kick it in the butt quickly. So I will be back tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern USA time. That is 5 hours from now. So whatever time it is where you are now, I'll be back in 5 hours. For those of you headed to bed and headed off for the evening, thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you Sunday during Scrappy Bowl. There's a time zone converter in the video description to let you know when 6:30 p.m. Eastern USA time is, so you can be here with us on Sunday. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.